Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
He is Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall,
host of the Chris Stigall Show.
So let's bring in talk radio host Chris Stigall.
Also, his podcast is a must-listen every day. Chris Stigall Show podcast.
And host of the Chris Stigall Show.
Let's bring in Chris Stigall.
Please welcome Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey there, thanks a lot for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast. I know there are many, many podcasts you could choose from, so that you choose us is not a small thing. Thank you. Thanks for the 5-star reviews. Thanks, as always, for your written reviews at Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And I want to tell you about my friend in Cincinnati named John Ruhlman. Now, he runs a company called U.S. Medical Plan. And John has been a sponsor of mine and a friend of mine for a long while. And he has gotten calls from this audience, including calls from my own family, calls from colleagues and friends of mine who have shopped with him their current health insurance plan. And he has saved friends and family thousands of dollars, literally. Let me give you a for example. I have a friend who bought private health insurance for his family. His daughter had some special health needs that cost him quite a bit of money a month to get premiums covered for all of them. John found him identical coverage and saved him $2,000 a month. That's jaw-dropping money. My parents called John for a supplemental health insurance plan for their Medicare. John saved them $400 a month. Now, every nickel is precious, particularly when you're sitting on an income that you've got to count on for the rest of your days and you're counting your change. $400 is a lot of money. All right, so that's what John can do for you. Or maybe if you have no health insurance at all and you think it's too expensive, I can't afford it right now. He has over 100 different private health insurance companies all over the country that he shops and compares so that he gets you the best rates and never cheats you on coverage, by the way. It doesn't mean it's some scant coverage. Great rates, great coverage. Let John and his team at usmedicalplan.com go to work for you today. You can also call 877-410-4321. 877-410-4321, usmedicalplan.com. Glad to have you along, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in to the Monday edition of the show, and man, does it feel like it around here. Our telephone number, 855-STIGAL, if you'd like to get in on the program, 855-784-4255. Hope your weekend was a fantastic one. As we headed into the weekend, there was a lot of really interesting news happening. What with the exit of Elon giving his exit interview, at the same time Trump going to celebrate big developments in steel and doing so in Pennsylvania. Critical political state. And one of my great friends who covers Pennsylvania politics and knows it inside and out. I mean, he's literally been inside it. He has campaigned throughout the Commonwealth. He knows it well. And a figure that I encourage everyone in this audience to keep a sharp eye on is the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. My friend is Guy Ciarrocchi. He is an author at Real Clear Politics, also a publication called Broad and Liberty, and he's a senior fellow with the Commonwealth Foundation. Guy, good morning.
Good morning, Chris. Good to be back.
You betcha. I am intrigued with this trip to Pittsburgh. Clearly, everybody understands that this is an important state, although, interestingly, I was kind of surprised about this. John Fetterman, who I was 50-50 that he might stand next to Trump and be there for this thing. He didn't. Now, I don't know if he wasn't welcome or decided not to go. We talked with Senator McCormick. He couldn't be there because his daughter was having a graduation ceremony, or I'm sure he would have been there. Then there's Josh Shapiro. I think the most interesting figure in all of it. I think he's quickly kind of becoming a Gretchen Whitmer-esque Democrat, meaning if you can't beat him, join him a little bit. Is that your sense of it?
I think Governor Shapiro exemplifies the expression leading from behind. He is going to try and keep his feet in as many different camps as he can, because to him, the ultimate prize is to become president. In order to be president, he has to be the Democratic nominee. In order to be Democratic nominee, he wants to make sure he has the ability either to be the darling of progressives or the darling of moderates. So everything he does is calculated to make sure that he can keep a foot in each camp. And I think you saw this play out not only in the celebration of the U.S. Steel deal, which President Trump deserved to spike the football, but I think you see it in the whole year plus of us wondering if the steel plant would close. The governor leads from behind because he wants to make sure that he doesn't offend moderates or progressives. It's an interesting way to govern, and we'll see if he gets away with it as a candidate for president.
And there's no doubt in your mind, right, that the guy wants, I say this from time to time, people that live in other parts of the country, they may not know or pay much attention to Shapiro. And I think I've always maintained, and I think, subsequent reporting has backed this up, Shapiro likely turned down Kamala Harris. He's very smart. I think he saw her as a political loser and said, I don't want anything to do with this, and politely demurred. A lot of people say, well, the party's full of anti-Semites. They can't have a Jew on the ticket. I mean, I think there's an element of truth to that. But in my opinion, I think Shapiro said no thanks. He didn't want her political stink on him down the road, is my view. Yours?
Oh, look, I think he wants to be president more than anything. I think that the way you would go to, a single-A baseball team and interview the players, more than anything, they want to be in the MLB. He has wanted to be president forever. He is very thoughtfully methodical.
All right, we lost Guy there, but yeah, it's in fact here at the Dispatch, Josh Shapiro warms to national leadership. The digital scoreboard inside a gymnasium greeted Josh Shapiro with Home 48, Visitors 48, celebrating his service as the Keystone State's 48th governor. 48 is also the number of the administration that will succeed President Donald Trump in the White House in 2028. Isn't that cute? This is at thedispatch.com. They've been writing about this literally since he was elected to the White House. Guy Ciarrocchi back with us. We had a little technical hiccup there. So it is no secret that the guy has been shopping. I mean, I think since he was a county commissioner, people have been looking at him as president.
Well, he's been doing that. He's also been calculating in each and everything he does. Even this last round where someday maybe Jake Tapper will get to the bottom of it and let us know what happened in the vice presidential nomination. But even when he tried to ostensibly help the Harris ticket, the Harris-Walz ticket, he did it by campaigning in states that would help him. So it's a calculating move. And as I said, more importantly for those living in Pennsylvania, you have this sort of cautious leader who leads from behind, never wanting to offend moderates, never wanting to offend progressives, which is why we haven't gotten much done other than elevate his stature so that national talk shows talk about Josh Shapiro, not so much his record of accomplishment, but his ability to be a good candidate for president. So far, the plan is working. I don't know if it'll come to fruition if at some point he doesn't choose to actually get his hands dirty and govern.
Guy Ciarrocchi is at Real Clear Politics, also at Broad and Liberty. He's a senior fellow at the Commonwealth Foundation. So politically speaking, we understand how Pennsylvania vacillates. I think people are looking at states like Michigan and Wisconsin, too. We know come the midterms, it's historically so, that the party in power generally loses, and the party in power doesn't nearly have the momentum and the enthusiasm behind them that those who are on the sidelines do. Democrats, we know one thing. The rabid are really rabid, and they'll move heaven and earth to get Democrats elected. Does the Trump effect in Pennsylvania carry over to midterm Republicans? You know a thing or two about running congressional races as well.
So the things we have to remember is, first, for the left, government is their oxygen. They need every seat. They want to hold power. They want to be involved in what our children learn in school, the way our courts are run, and Congress and the White House. So Republicans and conservatives have to remember that for the left, this is oxygen. There's no such thing as an off-year election. Pennsylvania just had its primary a few weeks ago. Democratic turnout was 4% higher than Republicans. That was a reminder that even though it's a so-called off-year election for school board members and local officials, Democrats outperformed Republicans. I think for the president to be successful, two things. One is his policies have to continue to work. Inflation has to come down. The economy needs to get stronger. The Republicans in Congress need to show that they're governing with him to reduce government. He secured the border. The second is the president is going to have to make 2026 personal. He's going to have to come back to Pennsylvania and say, we haven't finished the job. I need your help. I think if his policies are working as they've started to do, and if he comes here and makes it personal, I think Donald Trump may yet again surprise the political world, and 2026 might not be the down year that everybody thinks it is. But those two things have to happen. The Republicans in Congress have to help him govern to get done what he promised. And secondly, he's going to have to campaign almost like he was running for president and make this very personal. If he does, voters will respond and help him finish the job.
You know, Guy, I'm so glad you said that, because today at the Harrumph Society, I revisit this theme that I just think Trump has put us on a different footing than Republicans have been maybe in a very long time, constantly on offense. There's no need for us to be defensive anymore. I mean, it's like almost across the board, everything that Trump is working toward is an 80-20 issue, almost everything. So there's really, I mean, if this big, beautiful bill happens, these tax cuts happen, I assume they will, and then they really get cracking on reducing spending, I feel like Republicans don't have to be defensive about anything, Guy. It feels like they really ought to be foot on the gas pedal offense.
Oh, without a doubt. Look, so far it's been promises made, promises kept. He's secured the border. He's negotiating to trying to find peace in the Middle East. He's trying to find peace with Russia and Ukraine. He, with Elon Musk's help, has exposed waste, fraud, and abuse. He's trying to reinvent government. It reminds me, as we come to 2026, the Democrats will talk about the evils and how they have to stop him. I think the president and his team need to lead in and say, I'm not done. It reminds me of when Ronald Reagan was running and trying to hand off to George H.W. Bush. And Ronald Reagan said, our opponents say they want change. He said, for heaven's sakes, we are the change. And I think that's what Donald Trump needs to continue to do. The job is not done. We're not going to stop and go back to what they want. We have to finish the job. Let me finish the job. Let me secure our border. Let me rebuild our manufacturing. Let me unleash American energy. Let us make sure that the bad guys go to jail and the good people are safe in their home. Let us do the things we need to do. Help us do the things we do, which is why the Republicans in Congress need to show that they are partners, not rubber stamps, but partners. Then that argument is much more compelling that people understand there's major heavy lifting to do to fix the harm of the last decade. It needs to be fixed. He needs a partner. If he makes it personal, if he fights back, to your point, I think the public will respond to that because they see him fighting. They want to know that Republicans are not rubber stamps, but allies in the fight.
Yes, so well said, Guy. And we'll see. We'll see if the Republicans in Congress can pick up the torch and do this, because they're going to have to run the race on their own. Suburbs Guy on X, if you want to follow Guy Ciarrocchi, by the way. He's absolutely brilliant in all matters of politics. But if you want the very specific dirt on what's going on in Pennsylvania, at PA Suburbs Guy is Guy Ciarrocchi. Thank you, my friend. Always great to catch up.
Thank you. Look forward to staying in touch as Pennsylvania stays in the news as the quintessential swing state.
Back in a minute. A couple of interesting polls here this morning. Nearly half of registered voters oppose, this is from the Wall Street Journal, oppose federal funding being cut from NPR and PBS. Half of registered voters. Well, nearly half. That means more than half, I would assume, either are indifferent or don't mind the taxpayers aren't funding it anymore. The poll shows that 39% of Americans are for cutting it. 49% of registered voters opposed. The survey shows that 33% strongly oppose the cuts, 23% strongly favor them. Broadcasters have been these broadcasters have been regarded as biased by conservatives. Well, I mean, Wall Street Journal, yeah. 100 registered voters. Okay. Well, I still say that's one of those 80-20 issues. If you ask taxpayers, do we need federally funded, taxpayer-funded broadcasting? I mean, I can't imagine, here again, I imagine if I'm the pollster, if I'm walking the streets and asking the question my way, and I ran into 10 people at a shopping center today, and I asked them, hey, do you listen to or watch commercial broadcast media? Probably most of them say yes at some point during their week, yes. And then if I said, do you think your tax money ought to go to fund a broadcast entity to cover government? I bet you most people would say no. If you took, see, the problem is, of course, NPR and PBS now have this almost religious shield It's almost this article of faith that if you're a public broadcaster, that means it's for the public good. You know, it's like saying, I'm a judge. That used to carry with it some meaning. Sadly, not anymore. I'm a doctor. That used to carry with it some meaning. Sadly, not anymore. We now have to look at everything through the prism of politics, I'm sorry to say. Not my fault. Not conservatives' fault. It's the left's fault. Doctors wearing white lab coats have tried to force you to take things that you don't need, often for profit. Judges in black robes have tried to run roughshod over the executive branch. And look, here we are now. There are no distinguished titles anymore. Public broadcasting used to be Mr. Rogers and Big Bird to a lot of people, and they have an emotional soft spot for that. National Public Radio. That was supposed to be where smart people got in-depth analysis on things. Well, not anymore. They're partisan hacks. So if you just simply ask the American people, should we fund broadcasting with our tax dollars, with all the media that exists today? And that's the way I'd ask it. Is there a shortage of media today? Do you think most people would say yes or no? I think most people would say, no, there is no shortage of media. There's plenty of ways to get my news today. Do you need your tax dollars to pay for a public broadcaster to deliver your news? If you ask people that way, I think most of them would say no. So that is absolutely one of those issues that I think Trump and Republicans continue to run on and press on. Meanwhile, a record share of Americans want the government to get more done, says CNN. Neither the Republican nor Democrat Party has consolidated a majority of the public's support behind their approach, with more than 4 in 10 saying that neither party can get things done or has strong leadership. The poll, taken as the public opinion resettles in the first months after Trump's second administration, also finds record high share of the public saying government should be doing more to solve problems. Well, that's another loaded question. You know, when you ask people what they think of Congress, nobody thinks they're doing well, whether you're a left-wing wackadoo or whether you're a conservative who wants the government to cut spending and return more of your disposable income and cut rules and regs. Most of us all agree. That's the one thing, ironically, everyone agrees on. Congress isn't doing enough. But it's the doing, the definition of doing, that matters. If you ask me, is Congress doing enough? I say, no, they're not doing enough. And if the pollster went further and says, well, what do you mean they're not doing enough? I say, they're not doing enough to cut spending. They're not doing enough to get out of our way and reduce the size and scope of government. Now, if you ask a flame-throwing wacko, they will say government is not doing enough to take Trump to court, to thwart Trump, to investigate Trump, to run Trump out of office, to grow in every facet. That's what Democrats think the success of government means. So it depends on who you ask. Anyway, still to come, Colonel Kurt Schlichter will be with us today. Sit tight. Everybody talking about the MAHA movement, Make America Healthy Again. Balance of Nature says, welcome to the party. They've been working hard, producing a vibrant nutritional supplement second to none for many, many years before it became fashionable. So many other people use chemicals and additives for their supplements, but Balance of Nature is made solely from whole food ingredients. And while other methods sacrifice nutritional quality for the sake of profits and volume, Balance of Nature, they use an advanced cold process, a vacuum cold process. It includes freeze-drying their fruits and vegetables into a fine powder, and so that allows them to retain as much nutritional value as possible. And they don't cut corners, for volume or other things, as maybe some other supplements do. Balance of Nature packs a real nutritional punch, and that's the whole reason to take Balance of Nature. Get the most nutrition for the sake of your good health. And if you use my name, Chris, as your promo code right now, you'll save 35% off your order, and they're even going to ship it to you for free. Plus, a money-back guarantee if you're not happy. Call them, 800-2468-751. Use the discount code Chris. Once again, don't forget the discount code Chris for that big 35% off savings plus free shipping. Order online, balanceofnature.com. All right, let's go to the audio. I told you that I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Tapper ultimately ends up selling very, very few books. Well, as it turns out, his show, as we told you, has hit an all-time ratings low in the midst of his book tour. He went on the Barry Weiss podcast called Honestly with Barry Weiss. And I don't know, incredulity doesn't even begin to describe the way I feel about Jake in 2277 here. Take a listen.
But would you say that looking back at the body of your work over the past, during the Biden White House, that you could have brought a level of skepticism, scrutiny, and curiosity to this story?
I mean, of course, I don't think there are very few members of the legacy media that I don't think could say that. But I will say that in October 2020, I interviewed Joe Biden and I asked if he would take a pledge to be transparent about his health. And in October 2022, the only time I had an interview with him during his presidency, I pointed out that the American people think he's too old. Whenever he's asked about that, he says, watch me. They're watching him. They still think that. I had skeptical interviews with Karine Jean-Pierre in 2023. And after the Her report, I had Kate Bedingfield come on the show. And I was not a Robert Her basher. I completely thought that he was accurate, and I didn't understand what I was seeing from the White House or from other journalists that didn't see what we were all seeing. So I think that there is reporting that I'm proud of that is also part of the record. But on the whole, I wish these 200 sources had talked to us 2 years ago. And I wish I'd known what I know now. I would not say I was incurious. I would say that I was one of the many people who was asking about this and was lied to over and over and over. And it wasn't just, you have to remember, the Biden people were not only lying to the press, and they were not only lying to the public. They were lying to donors. They were lying to their cabinet secretaries. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress. A cover-up, and like I said, this was almost a successful one, even though we all saw him aging. We didn't know he was, he had these moments of non-functioning. Suggests that there's a lot of people in on something, and whether they were doing it because they believed it or they had been told it, I'd still, at the end of the day, for all the criticism of the media that I'm not pushing back on, that I agree with, at the end of the day, the Democrats did this. At the end of the day, the Biden family and the Politburo did this. And yes, there were those of us who should have pushed back more, but if you can't get any official to tell you it's really bad behind the scenes, let me tell you how bad it is. I don't know what more we could have done. And I wish that those people had been more willing to talk to the press.
Couldn't find a soul. There wasn't one single person in all of Biden, the whole administration, in the whole White House, there wasn't a single person that could share that Biden was not functioning. Do you believe that? I mean, it really takes a lot to believe that. Jake Sullivan, the former national security advisor to Joe Biden, once said just not too long ago, it is not true, what Jake Tapper's out there saying that he doesn't know my name and couldn't remember my name. Jake Sullivan was pressed on this, 2282. Take a listen.
This story in the book that at one point the president couldn't get your name right and apparently called you Steve. Are you telling us that's not true, or that it is true but doesn't matter?
Look, I do not remember that happening. I have no recollection of that. I don't know if it happened. I don't think it did, but I can't say for certain it didn't. But let me tell you something. Joe Biden knows my name. It is absurd to suggest from that somehow he didn't know who I was. To this day, he picks up the phone and calls me. And assuming that, I'm under my name in his phone, he's doing that to this day. I will tell you that,
Yeah, well, I mean, look, if you're Jake Sullivan, think of it. Think of it. If you're him, if you're anybody in this Biden White House and you're out trying to write a book or you're out on a speaking tour, you instantly lose credibility if this husk is declared to be a husk, an empty vessel. You will have lost any credibility. I mean, if it's uncovered and you admit that ultimately the person running your operation was completely asleep at the switch or incapable, then what does that say about you? Not much. It's not a good thing. And, if Jake Tapper is to be believed, no one said a word about any of this. I mean, it's all such garbage, and we all know it's garbage, and that's why the book is really not doing great. Breitbart's John Nolte wrote it this way. Despite changing his story multiple times, dry humping the PR-tested word humility, and appearing on every program this side of Wayne's World out of Aurora, Illinois, Jake Tapper's fake-ass original Sin moved only 53,000 copies during its debut week. Meanwhile, ratings on his show cratered 25%. As a great man once said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. Now that 57,737 have been sold, he says, look, it's all about context. If I wrote a novel, says John Nolte, and I sold 57,000 units, he said I'd be dead already from the partying. But to be fair, 57,000 units sold were enough to put Tapper and his co-author, that poor guy who sits there like a hostage, Alex Thompson, at the top of the New York Times bestseller list. But you know the trick on that, don't you? And I can't verify for a fact that I know this is true. 57,000 copies sold. You know how that often works? There are entities out there like, it wouldn't surprise me if we found out that the people that own CNN or some of his friends or associates in Philadelphia who have deep pockets bought a bunch of them. I mean, he's been doing book tours and book events. They buy a bunch in bulk up front. So you can, you know, if you're a high-profile person enough, you can pad sales numbers by selling them to people in advance. Bob Woodward's book, by comparison, sold more than 1.1 million copies. Now, he has at least some fame to his name. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 1.1 million is far greater than 57,000, says Nolte, right? It's a glorious failure. Tapper and Thompson not only have the waning of their respective employers behind them. In Thompson's case, it's that stupid site Axios. But in Tapper's case, it's no less than one of the biggest multinational companies on earth. Add to that, these guys were everywhere last week pimping a fake book that laughably attempts to exonerate the regime media and the Democrat Party for attempting to gaslight the American people into believing a brain-dead Joe Biden was sharp as a tack. The whole point of the book is to claim a handful of Democrats are responsible for the cover-up, as opposed to the true conspirators, Jake Tapper, the regime media, and the entire Democrat Party. But I digress. Obviously, the well-deserved backlash against Tapper in this book hurt his sales. Why? Credibility, says Nolte. Like him or not, Bob Woodward at least had some credibility. Jake Tapper, meanwhile, has none. He's a damaged brand. He's now a national joke. He will forever be a punchline. No one will ever believe him again, nor should they. Finally, his smug arrogance caught up with him. The long overdue fall has arrived. He actually thought he could get away with this Orwellian rewrite of his well-documented history of not only gaslighting the American people about Biden's mental acuity, but shaming those people who told the truth as well. And the result was nothing less than the total destruction of his reputation. Look at that number, 57,737. Just look at it, says Nolte. Even Democrats aren't interested in a book co-authored by a proven liar and a charlatan. Oh, and along with his excrement, Tapper's excrement show is cratering to decade-low ratings. Back in 2015, Jake Tapper might not have had many viewers, but at least he had his reputation. Well, now his reputation is gone, and he's right back to nobody watching. There can be no forgiveness without a full confession, says Nolte. There can be no redemption without a full admission. That's the always brilliant and cuts right to the quick John Nolte over at Breitbart. I had quite a chuckle about that. Now, Bill Clinton is out there defending. I wondered where the Clintons were on this. They hadn't had much to say lately. But remember, the one thing that the Clintons and the Bidens share in common is trying to lock out Barack Obama and the legacy of Barack Obama. So they've joined forces and united now as best they can to show a united front. They need their reputation squarely intact as they try to take control back from Barack Obama, who has been running the party for the better part of 20 years. Here's what Bill Clinton, 2284, had to say about the husk.
Speaking of aging, there's this book that came out that talks about Joe Biden and the people around him seeing that he had cognitive and physical decline. Did you ever have a moment with him where you thought maybe he was unfit to run for president? No.
I thought he was a good president. The only concern I thought he had to deal with was, could anybody do that job until they were 86? And we'd had several long talks. I had never seen him and walked away thinking he can't do this anymore. He was always on top of his brief.
You never saw any cognitive decline?
So I didn't know anything about any of this, and I haven't read the book. I saw President Biden not very long ago, and I thought he was in good shape. But the book didn't register with me because I never saw him that way.
Why didn't you read the book?
I didn't want to, because he's not president anymore, and I think he did a good job, and I think we are facing challenges today without precedent in our history.
Oh, it's so sad, really, isn't it? It's sad to watch aging people trying desperately to cling to what's left of some kind of resume or history that doesn't exist anymore. Josh Hawley, by the way, 2286 here. Here's the senator from Missouri saying a Secret Service guy told him how bad Biden was.
Came from a Secret Service whistleblower this past year. I talked to so many of them after the attempted assassinations of President Trump. But this Secret Service whistleblower actually was assigned to Biden, and he told me that Biden used to get lost in his closet in the mornings in the White House. I mean, the guy literally stumbling around in the White House residence couldn't find his way out of his own closet. The president of the United States. I mean, this is outrageous. We were lied to. And Sean, you know.
Yeah. No, we were. That's right. It is. And it is we joke about it, but it's a huge scandal. We'll be back. Stephen Miller was, I don't know. I don't know what else to say other than I could play for you an entire 10-minute monologue from Stephen Miller on what the Democrats are, defining who the Democrats are, to Lara Trump on her show on Fox News this weekend. It's just the guy, I'm glad he's a communicator in the White House, but he has a future as a talk show host if he wants one. 2283. Take a listen to some of Stephen Miller here.
Where do you think their party goes from here?
Part of the reason why they have resorted to lawfare as effectively their entire political strategy is because they have an unsellable ideology. In other words, they're committed in a popular democracy. They're committed to a series of beliefs that are like 10, 20% in support. So they have to be corrupt to get anything done. Men and women's sports, as the president says, completely open borders to the worst criminals on the face of the earth. People guilty of child predation, murder, even people who are guilty of violent torture and beating and killing and just senseless slaughtering. And they're let in without limitation for 4 years, right? A political party that's committed to raising taxes on everybody, right? A political party that is against the police, that wants to defund the police in your community, that wants to let rioters run free. And the punching bag for all of this are the hardworking American citizens. The people who do it right, they're the ones who are getting the brunt of it every day, economically, socially, culturally. So it's an unwinnable political message. If we can accomplish these reforms to just have a free and fair society, the Democrats are doomed. They cannot compete or operate in a fair system, which is why they have to rig it.
Yeah, it's just, and it was, I recommend if you can go find the entirety of that conversation, you should hear it. But he lays out, that's the nut of it right there. And why, again, in the Harrumph Society today, I lay out there is no reason for any Republican to be defensive at all. Being on offense is critically important right now because there is nothing about the Republican Party and what it's offering at this hour for which they should feel apologetic. They're trying to save the nation, literally, from ruin. And what does the left stand for? Guys in El Salvadoran prisons and Molotov cocktails being hurled at pro-Israel demonstrations in Boulder. And boys competing against girls in girls' sports. That's what they have. That's what they stand for. Hakeem Jeffries confronted with the fact that the country does not support Democrats, 22-92. He doesn't have much to offer.
Mr. Leader, you brought up polls, so let me tell you about a new one that just came out here at CNN this morning. It shows that only 19% of Americans say that your party can get things done. 36 say the same about Republicans. And just 16% say your party has strong leaders. It's pretty rough, and you are one of those leaders. How do you turn that around?
Yeah, we don't have the presidency right now, so that's always going to be challenging a few months after a presidential election. But we have to continue to make the case, one, that Democrats, of course, are the party that is determined to make life more affordable for everyday Americans, for hardworking American taxpayers, that we believe that we need to lower the high cost of living, which for decades has been going up, while the size of the middle class has been going down. So understandably, there's real frustration amongst the American people. They should be frustrated.
But they're frustrated with you as well, with Democrats as well.
Of course, they're frustrated with the system.
The system that more or less you've been running, by the way, sir, a system that has abused the people, which Stephen Miller, of course, correctly says. The people of this country want their country back. They want a leg up. They want a fair shot. They're tired of feeling victimized by their own government. And it's a government that's largely been run by Democrats for the better part of 2 decades now. Quick break for news. Kurt Schlichter on the way. Sit tight. Hey there, it's Chris Stigall. You know, this past summer, I went on a cruise with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Mike Gallagher, my Salem radio colleagues, and I met so many listeners like you who have been on my PhD weight loss program journeys, and I decided for myself it was time to jump in. I wanted to give this Dr. Ashley everybody's been talking about call myself. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team customize plans for your body to make weight loss simple, and they provide 80% of your food at no additional cost. They treat your whole person, and so I've decided to join so many of you. Join Sebastian Gorka, join Mike Gallagher, and all the weight they've lost, I'd like to do it myself. I've decided to call up my PhD weight loss. I hope you'll join me. Maybe we can start this weight loss journey together. Reach out, get started. Tell them I sent you and said hi. I'd love to hear how you're doing at 864-664-1900. That's 864-664-1900 or myphdweightloss.com. Don't forget to tell them Chris Stigall is going to start losing weight with you. Here we are, 2025. Happy New Year, and our friends at Gulag America are back and along for the ride. You know, they have been not only great sponsors, but they have been ride or die founders at the Harrumph Society. I am so appreciative for our friends at Gulag America. I love the work they do, and we have every reason to be optimistic in this new year. They are, we are, all of us are. America's resurgence, it's back. Trump's back, and Gulag America wants to continue to be your premier source for topical and satirical apparel and other gear designed to help give you voice for your love of liberty and your desire to see America great again. I know we all share that in common. Gulag America does too, but that doesn't mean that the deep state's not going to be busy at work. They're not going to go gently into the good night, as they say. So Gulag America is ready. They want you battle ready. They want you geared up, and they've got hilarious stuff for you to buy, and they're going to give it to you at a deep discount to kick off the new year. You ready for this? You take 15% off all orders at gulagamerica.com when you use my promo code Chris15. So if you go shopping today and you see a shirt you like, and you will because they're hilarious, go to gulagamerica.com, type the promo code Chris15. That's Chris15. Type it in the checkout, and then you'll save big. Enjoy the new year. Enjoy new savings with that same quality, that same hilarious attitude that you've come to expect from our buddies at Gulag America, where they say, it's not our wish, it is our warning. All right, so the Trump White House feeling like they got to go foot on the gas pedal this weekend on all the Sunday shows. It was a blitz to make sure the Senate feels the pressure to get this thing passed. Colonel Kurt Schlichter, I believe we have him now. And I tell you what, Colonel, because we're having a case of the Mondays around here, if you can hang on for another segment, I'd love to hold you over for another segment. But good morning to you, my friend. Ahoy.
Sure, you can hold me in any way you want. But enough about the Glenn Greenwald video.
Oh, now you brought up Greenwald. Okay.
Here on Salem, let's discuss that in detail.
You know what? Can you guys turn him up a little bit? Because I can barely hear the Colonel on my end, but I heard you enough to hear Glenn Greenwald. So let me just tackle this first. If you know the investigative journalist Glenn Greenwald, some, let's say, illicit video of him surfaced over the weekend. He addressed it and said, yeah, I did it. It's my private time. I'm not ashamed of having done it. I did it. And he was apparently involved with some male prostitute and some such. So what are we to make of Glenn? You know Glenn Greenwald a little bit, right? I think I've had him on the show once.
Well, I've never met him. I think we travel in different circles.
I think that's official now, yeah.
But the only thing I can think of that's creepier is David French's browser history. Look, I'm just, first of all, I think it's interesting that we're on Salem talking about Glenn Greenwald.
Well, it's a news story. We do it,
Well, it's a thing that happened. Maybe we move on to
look, here's the thing. But here's the thing, and here's the point that I made. Here's the point that I made. I realize what he did was untoward and grotesque and all of those things. It's not really. I'm not rendering judgment on any of it. But the point of the thing is, Glenn Greenwald has done some outstanding journalism, and I think where a lot of people would like to take it is, okay, because he's a pervert weirdo in his free time, his journalism is now null and void. And I want to be careful not to go there.
Well, I've never been impressed by his journalism. He was sucking up to Edward Snowden, figuratively, who's a traitor. And you can despise the American deep state and not think that we should give information to our enemies. He also is a total Palestinian. He's never said a bad word about Hamas. I don't think he's a great journalist. I think he's kind of a commie. I find him tiresome. And I would prefer he stay away from me and at least 1,000 yards away from school.
Yeah, no, his private life was disturbing, to put it mildly. I mean, to say you're not ashamed, it's Pride Month after all. You know better than anybody in Southern California what Pride is all about.
Well, look,
right?
I'm sure the Bulwark's getting ready to make a column offer, but. Listen, I get perverts mixed up. Because I live in California, I know. So there's overlap.
There are a lot of them.
Wow.
I tell you what I'm going to do, Colonel, if I could. I want to hold you over. You've written an important piece at Town Hall. Israel and the West need to get serious about defeating our enemies. We need to get serious about fixing a couple of things on our end. And once we've done that and take a break, I intend to come back and talk with you about your important piece. Do you mind?
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it.
Ahoy! I'll be right back with you. Ahoy, and thank you for your patience. Thank you for listening and for your patience as well. Our telephone number is 855-STIGAL. If you'd like to get in on the program today, 855-STIGAL. You can find the brand new edition of the Harrumph Society out today, as well as I hope you continue to give and support as you can our Angel Tree Camp campaign, which I'll tell you more about. You've really stepped up last week. I appreciate you for that. That's also linked up there at chrisstigall.com. Back in a minute. Back with my friend Colonel Kurt Schlichter. His piece today at Town Hall, Israel and the West need to get serious about defeating our enemies. As you and I talk today, Colonel, Ukraine has struck deep, and I mean deep. We're talking Siberia via drone into Russia. How do you read that? They've not done that before. That's big.
No, that is big, and they attacked nuclear assets, long-range bombers, which may have some other implications. This is a huge deal, and I think we need to learn from it as Americans. We are unbelievably vulnerable here in the United States. If you go look, we're leaving our planes out as if we're at peace. We're leaving our ships out as if there's no threat. Chinese container ships could contain drones. Trucks near our military facilities could contain drones. This is the future of warfare. It's very sobering. And we need to completely rethink the idea that American forces are safe just because we're on the North American continent.
So you're saying that Ukraine has basically shown us a blueprint of what modern warfare looks like in doing this yesterday?
Well, absolutely. And people have been talking about it. I've been talking about this. If you look at my book, The Attack, wrong book, this book, there is a sequence in there where, bad people attack our B-2 bombers on the ground because they're just sitting there. And it's, the fact is we are acting like it's December 6th and everybody's partying on Saturday night in Honolulu. And that is a real problem.
Does that mean the Golden Dome? Yeah, Trump talks about this Golden Dome. Is that a real need? Do you like that pitch?
Well, look, there's multiple kinds of threats. Hypersonic missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. Yeah, those are threats. Drones are also threats. They're a different kind of threat. But what about infiltrators, which I talk about in The Attack? The terrifying fact is there are no doubt enemy forces here in America undercover that can launch attacks. That's what happens when you throw your doors open. I mean, just yesterday in Boulder, we had some mysterious guy whose motive couldn't be divined, shouting free Palestine and throwing Molotov cocktails at Jews protesting Palestinian barbarity. It is they're here. So there are real threats, and Americans just walk along like do-de-do. Doesn't who knows what's happening? It doesn't matter. Nothing bad can happen to us. We're Americans. We're safe. Not true. I wish it were true, but it isn't.
The brand new book, by the way, that Colonel Kurt Schlichter and his lovely wife have authored together is called Los Angeles: Silver Bullets on the Sunset Strip. California continues to be, by the way, destination for all of this unbelievable, like more statewide tournaments, girls losing to biological boys in their sports. And I don't know how that ends, but I don't think it's going to end well. I think that it's still such an 80-20 issue. If we keep seeing our daughters and our girls run over by boys pretending to be girls, that can't end well for us culturally, can it?
Well, look, I think you're starting to see Democrats go, well, maybe it's suboptimal. They're trying desperately, but the problem for the Democrats is they're largely pagan neurotics gobbling SSRIs and Chardonnay, and they have filled up the space where God belongs with all this commie gobbledygook, to quote Norm Macdonald. It is so these are not political positions, right? These are sacraments. I mean, you look at Republicans and guys like me who've always been very, very free market are like, well, okay, let's rethink tariffs. Let's look at this and see if right now we need to adopt another policy. Okay, it's just a policy to us, right? It's just a tool to get us onto freedom. They, on the other hand, these are all sacraments. Okay, these are holy texts. You must believe that a man can become a woman by the power of wanting and tucking.
Beautifully said, Colonel. I hate that we've run out of time, but we have. But I hope that everyone picks up your brand new book called Lost Angeles and the brand new column, Israel and the West Need to Get Serious About Defeating Our Enemies. Thank you, my friend. We'll see you soon. It's Monday, and around these parts on Mondays, we've got a brand new feature, relatively new in the last couple of months. She's good enough to do it with us every single Monday, called Mondays with Maguire, Erin Maguire, Republican political strategist extraordinaire. You see her all over cable news, and we are so grateful she gives us her brain every Monday. Good morning, Erin.
Good morning, Chris. Happy Monday. How are you?
And to you, doing great, thank you. I'm glad you could be with us. I saw you were getting in a little golf again this weekend. Are you just taking it up, or do you know the game?
I'm very new to the game. I started golfing last year. I joined a women's golf league out here in the D.C. area. So clinics started this weekend, and my husband and I went out and played 9 after work on Friday and 18 holes yesterday. So it was a great golf weekend.
The reason I ask, and I saw you were with your husband. This will test a new marriage. I assume your husband already played. So oftentimes when you're trying to learn the game with someone who plays the game, that can be tense. It's often recommended you do not learn from your loved one or good friend when trying to learn it? Are you guys navigating that all right?
We're doing great. So I do take lessons. He's not my sole instructor, but he caddies for me when we're out on the course. And I'll ask him like, okay, should I play my 5-iron here? Am I going to play my hybrid? Are we going to, do a little pitching wedge shot up here? Should I just putt? So we have a great conversation about it. He is the best caddy in the country, and I'm sure he hates me saying that, but he's also a very good golf player.
Well, I'm glad you were out there having fun. It's important to do. I want to welcome aboard the show our new sponsors at Texas Bullion Exchange. Great guys. If you go to buytexasgold.com, you will see my smiling mug right there at the top of the page. Since leaving the gold standard in 1971, the dollar has lost over 90% of its purchase power. Now, if you think about that, what used to cost $1 now takes $10 or more. That's pretty stunning. And if you think about gold, on the other hand, it's held strong. It's increased over 7,000%, as a matter of fact, in that very same window of time. So if you're holding a bunch of savings in cash, that's losing buying power by the day. Texas Bullion Exchange wants to help you diversify a portion of that wealth right now, roll over maybe an existing part of your IRA or the entire thing into physical gold and silver. And right now, for every $1,000 you diversify in gold with Texas Bullion Exchange, you'll get a free ounce of silver. Claim that free silver and learn more. That website again is buytexasgold.com. Be sure and mention my name, Chris, when you reach out to them, buytexasgold.com. Here's their number, okay? 855-839-2728. At Texas Bullion Exchange, the focus is on helping you preserve what you've worked so hard to build. Protect that wealth. Keep it safe from inflation. Tangible assets like gold and silver, not paper promises. That's what they can do for you. BuyTexasGold.com or call 855-839-2728. Be sure you mention Chris when you give him a ring. You know, the exit of Elon Musk this weekend, I found that kind of interesting. Everybody is now trying to make something of this being a rift or some sort of tension. Of course, we know there's not. I mean, they had a big kind of exit ceremony for him on Friday. He gave an interview on Sunday and says, hey, shocker, he doesn't agree with everything going on with the big, beautiful bill. It wasn't an attack on Trump. But the Elon effect, what I want to ask you about, because it was a short week last week and I didn't get to ask you about this, there are a lot of Republican voters who were excited. I was one. Excited about the DOGE cuts, excited about what he led in terms of finding the waste, fraud, and abuse. And then people felt like Congress didn't do much with it. Now, today we hear the White House is maybe going to send a rescission package to Congress to take it up. I think that was in response to a lot of people feeling like the big, beautiful bill didn't cut what they thought it should cut, even though others have said this was never about DOGE, the big, beautiful. So there was some mixed messaging, and I think the electorate that supports Trump and Republicans was starting to waver a little bit on the big, beautiful bill. So how do you read the whole thing?
One, Elon was always going to be a short-term temporary employee at the White House. He's done the work he feels he can do. And of course, as a private citizen, he will be out there sharing his feelings about how he feels about legislation. He clearly has a political heart and cares deeply about this country. And the fact that he is dead on when he tells the media, you're going to try to make something of this, but I don't agree with everything. That doesn't mean I dislike the president. I mean, that's why a lot of people don't speak up sometimes, because the media wants to try and twist their words instead of being able to say, yeah, I disagree on this point, but that doesn't mean that I think everything is terrible. And when it comes to the rescissions package, this was always going to be a multi-layered process in order to be able to get the tax cuts done, to get cuts done, to try and get our fiscal house in order. So we have the package now over in the Senate for the tax cuts that is now going to go through the birdbath process over there, and John Thune will have to navigate that. This rescissions package, the ability to bring back some of that money back through the House, that package will codify some of these DOGE cuts. It's another step in the process. The third step of this process, now openly being discussed in the House, is getting all 12 appropriations packages passed. That will also allow us to make significant cuts, because we will be putting forward the actual budgetary and spending process to be able to do that. Those three things together, the tax bill, the rescissions package with the DOGE cuts, plus the budget process we see with all 12 bills, if they do get passed, that has not happened since 1997. If it was to happen, that is a huge opportunity, and each one's just a step along the way. Elon was just one part of the bigger opportunity to get the United States fiscal house in order.
You told me several weeks ago that it's just historically so, and you didn't think it was likely to change, that next year the party in power in the House would probably lose. Do you still see it that way? I mean, if they really do pull off what you just said, that three-pronged approach, more appropriations, reductions in spending, these rescissions, and this, capped tax cut forever, do they have a story to sell that could change that historical narrative next year, or no?
There is an opportunity, but again, it's always going to come down to those majority maker states, your New Yorks, your Californias, your larger population states, and what they're able to do. If they are able to keep those SALT deductions in the tax bill and bring back more spending cuts and secure the border. We've seen where immigration messaging works in Democrats' favor in swing districts in New York congressional districts. So we need to keep continuing the conversation with voters. But Democrats, it is about the radical people they are putting forward right now that will be the counter messaging to what Republicans are able to achieve on a positive front, because you do need a boogeyman if you're going to be able to win the House. And for Democrats, let's look at New York. Let's look at the New York City's mayor's race. Right now, they have a radical Democrat who's up against Andrew Cuomo, and let's all be very worried about New York City if Andrew Cuomo is the most sane candidate on the Democratic ticket there to try and fuel them forward. But they have an extreme leftist who's getting within a few points of him. If that happens in New York City, that will have reverberations across the state. That's an opportunity to paint a boogeyman who's now the radical left face of the Democrat Party moving forward. They need an antithesis to us. And if we have a good message, we just have to pick our opportunities to show how radically out of touch they are. Anybody who's not out there denouncing anti-Semitism, denouncing this Free Palestine movement, denouncing Hamas and their murderous rampages that are now affecting citizens here in the United States, that's an opportunity as well. We just have to continue to stay on our toes. We will have a good message as Republicans, but it's up to us to make sure we show that Democrats would make us less safe, less strong, and less secure with less of our own money if we were to elect them.
Yeah, and that's just it. What one wonders is, can the Republican turnout model work like it did in 2024? It was a presidential cycle. I know it never does. But Democrats are going to be motivated. We know that. I mean, we know the registration number. Like, they're frothing to turn out and vote. And they want to return to all those insane things you just said. And I just wonder, everybody that feels kind of satisfied, like, whew, all right, Trump's back, so everything's fine. That is kind of how we tend to, I say we collectively, not you and me and most of this audience, but Republican voters kind of kick back and they go, all right, Papa Bear's back in the White House. We can cool our heels. And that's exactly what Republicans can't afford right now.
That's right. I mean, Trump is the defining factor in this, and he's the one who a lot of these voters who help in these swing districts have come out for. Now, the president's sitting on about a $500 million political operation right now with money in the bank to play in these midterms. And that's going to go a long way. When we saw the shift in voters, we also saw a shift in who Republicans became. And so now, in order to have conversations at the door, which is really a lot of what it takes sometimes, is interaction between a voter and a neighbor or somebody in their community about a candidate, those multiple touch points, those mail pieces, you have to be able to fund all of that to continue the message forward, to be able to try and draw these low propensity voters out, because these are people who do not historically vote in other elections. Democrats have become the party of the high propensity voter. So we have to convince the swing voters, the moderates, the Republicans, yes, everybody needs to be able to turn out. And so now we need to start ramping up the operations once we get through primary season and everybody knows, who the candidates are going to be, because also part of this is the math come January. That's when you'll probably see more retirements. How do Democrats feel? Are there going to be swing district retirements? Are there going to be other seats that open up between now and the election due to retirements or job changes to change the calculus on this? But Republicans have to stay in consistent contact with voters in order to try and drive them out on election day, because those swing voters who came to Donald Trump do not normally behave in that pattern. And so it's up to us now to do the continued voter conversation that Democrats fell so far behind on, and now they're trying to make up for.
Erin Maguire, a Republican strategist. She joins us every Monday in a segment we call Mondays with Maguire. You know John Thune a little bit, you've said, and you know the way the Senate works a lot. And so, at this hour, you say what about the big, beautiful bill and where it stands? Is July 4th still optimistic now that we're into the second day of June?
I think that July 4th timeline is very doable for the Senate right now. Senator Thune does have a lot of concerns with members, but that was going to happen. It doesn't matter who the majority leader is. You're never going to take a House bill, send it to the Senate, and think that the senators in the majority party are going to agree with it. They are each going to want their own portion of this bill to reflect their priorities. So we are still very much in the messy middle sausage making of making this happen. But again, John Thune understands his members. He understands his conference. He understands the parliamentarian, the procedure, and the opportunity he has been given as majority leader to make history by continuing these Trump tax cuts to bolster middle-class families, to help secure our border, and to make sure America is stronger at home than we are ever before. This is a historic opportunity. He feels confident in his conference. They meet every week when they are in D.C. for senators' lunches, the Republican conference, and they will continue to have the conversations about what needs to be done in this bill. It'll get to the floor. They'll have the fight. But I feel good that they're going to be able to get this done by that July 4th. And let's remember, a lot of people were questioning Speaker Johnson on whether or not he could get it done on his timeline. He delivered yet again. I think John Thune will be able to do the same.
And just briefly, Rand Paul, is that a given? He's out. Now you've got to deal with the Murkowskis and the Collins and the McConnells. If you lose those four, it's bad news, right? Or is that all you can lose, 4 or 3?
You can lose 3, and then you can bring in the vice president as a tie-breaking vote on this. So we do have that opportunity. But yeah, I do believe that Senator Paul is very clearly indicated he is not interested in supporting this package in its current fashion and doesn't see a way that he could. Murkowski and Collins, yes, those are going to be 2 incredibly competitive votes to get. But senators do tend to be more moderate than hardcore conservative, not even if you're talking about Collins or Murkowski. You can look at a Ron Johnson, right? You can look at these other senators that will want to see additional changes made to this legislation in order to get it done. Senator Hawley's talking about the bill as well right now and what he wants to see. So there will be consistent, open family conversation in the U.S. Senate with the Republican conference to figure out what they need to do to get those final votes to get this across the finish line.
Erin Maguire, you are always the best. We are always grateful to kick off the week with you. Thank you so much. Mondays with Maguire. Back in a minute on the Stigall Show. Glad to have you back, folks. And, you know, today is our first broadcast day of June, and it's also the very first day of Angel Tree Camp in parts of this country. If you're not familiar with the campaign, a lot of kids across the country who are kids whose parents, one or both, are incarcerated. All over the country, that's the case. Kids with a mom or a dad in prison. They don't have a lot of positive things going on in their lives. But thanks to you and your generous giving thus far, many of them are going to be enjoying a week of fresh air and fun and, most importantly, gospel-centered activities. And that's all courtesy of a charity that we partner with every year here at Salem called Angel Tree Camp. And they do this near their home. Here again, this is a really unbelievably cost-effective, cost-efficient way that they do this. This is not this is not some sort of profit-driven charity. You can look them up for yourself. They can take $200 and give one child a whole week of camp. Now, I defy you to go find another camp for your kids or any kid at that cost. And this is the kind of thing they can use. A $200 gift from you, they can touch the heart of a child with an incarcerated parent and maybe change the trajectory of their whole lives. So many of you have given already, and I'm so grateful. You know, in Southwest Oklahoma, we got a lot of audience in Southwest Oklahoma, not far from Oklahoma City. There is a wonderful couple named Brian and Jamie, and they oversee the camp. And so Jamie shared some of her story and some of the reasons why you ought to consider giving to Angel Tree Camp. Take a listen.
I believe God has an amazing heart for young ones, and we all have to come to God with childlike faith. And so if we can get these campers to camp when they're young and when they're open, and especially these campers who may be coming from hard places with special wounds and special challenges, it can put them on a life-altering path. You could be breaking generational incarceration and helping set their entire family on a different trajectory by reaching the child.
Yeah, and so many of you have. I mean, we're nearing 50% of our goal. Almost there. We're trying to send 455 kids, courtesy of this audience. Can we get it? Can we get that done? We're, almost halfway there, and that's a great, great thing. $200 gets a child to camp for a whole week. If you can't do $200, do what you can. But I do hope that you will. Go to ChrisStigall.com, and right there at the top of the page, a lot of times they'll go and they won't quite see it because it's little. It's right up there at the top, though, very, very top of the page. Click on Make a Difference in a child's life. Click on the banner right there, Make the Difference in the Life of a Prisoner's Child. You click on that and you give, whatever you can give. You can call today and do it that way, too, at 888-206-2794, 888-206-2794. And I thank you in advance for being so charitable and so giving. I was thrilled with the way you guys were bringing it up from behind on Friday. Going to try to get there. We don't have a ton of time left, but I'd love to see us get close to halfway to our goal at least this week. So keep it coming, and thank you so much in advance for helping make the difference in a child's life. Marty McCary back on the Sunday shows. This guy's one of the best. Again, I'm reminded why, he's been a friend and a guest of this show for many, many years. And as FDA commissioner, just taking it right to Margaret Brennan on Face the Nation. 2298, take a listen to this.
Can you clearly state what the policy is? Because this is confusing.
Yeah, we believe the recommendation should be with the patient and their doctor. So we're going to get away from these blanket recommendations in healthy young Americans because we don't want to see, on the COVID vaccine schedule, we don't want to see kids kicked out of school because a 12-year-old girl is not getting her 5th COVID booster shot. We don't see the data there to support a young, healthy child getting a repeat infinite annual COVID vaccine. There's a theory that we should sort of blindly approve the new COVID boosters in young, healthy kids every year in perpetuity, and a young girl born today should get 80 COVID mRNA shots or other COVID shots in her average lifespan. We're saying that's a theory, and we'd like to check in and get some randomized controlled data. It's been about 4 years since the original randomized trials. So we'd like an evidence-based approach. Dr. Prasad and I published this in the New England Journal of Medicine last week. And we're basically saying we'd like to bring some confidence back to the public around this repeat booster strategy theory, because
your statement was not about repeat boosters. It says the vaccine is not recommended for pregnant women. The vaccine is not recommended for healthy children. That's different than annual booster.
Yeah, at this point, we're dealing, it is a booster strategy. People would be getting the updated shot. So whether or not a young, healthy
kids who haven't gotten
so we'd like to see the data. We'd love to see that that data
but on a practical level, for a parent at home hearing you and trying to make sense
We're
here.
saying take it back to your doctor.
If their child has not been vaccinated, are you recommending that their first encounter with COVID be an actual infection?
We're not going to push the COVID shot in young, healthy kids without any clinical trial data supporting it. That is a decision between a parent and their doctor. And just so, I don't know if you know these statistics, but for 88% of American kids, their parents have said no to the COVID shot last season. So the vast majority of Americans are saying no. Maybe they want to see some clinical data as well. Maybe they have concerns about the safety.
I don't want to crowdsource my health guidance. I want a clear thing, right? You don't go with popularity. You go with, as you're saying, data. And when we look
so
at
let's see the data.
I find her, every time I hear Margaret Brennan, increasingly more loathsome. And she tells you who she is as this conversation progresses. And that is, I demand you, government official, tell all of us how we're to behave. And isn't it refreshing to have a guy like Marty McCary say, I'm not going to tell you how to behave. I don't have the data to tell you how to behave. And she says, I demand that you as a government official tell me how to behave, and all of us right now. And thankfully, Marty McCary doesn't do that and doesn't subscribe to that, nor should anyone in medicine when the outcome is inconclusive. So that's a wrap for another Chris Stigall Show podcast. Thanks for committing to it, listening to it all the way through. You're a fighter. I like that about you. Hope you'll leave it a 5-star review and a written review. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We'll see you next time here on the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.